it was the first time that I read a textbook cover to cover because I was just so interested in everything. And I reread the section about editing, and I found that it comprised my love for gaming and technology and being a nerd. And I was like, oh my God, there's a job that will pay me to do this.
If you've ever been curious about what an assistant editor does on big Hollywood films and television shows, then today is your lucky day. I'm film editor Lawrence Jordan of MasterTheWorkflow.com. And I love sharing my knowledge, experience, and passion about every aspect of the film and video editing craft. Today we're talking with Scott Jacobs, who's an editor in his own right, but most recently worked as an assistant editor on Marvel Studios' hit show, Wanda Vision. In this exclusive, in-depth interview, Scott gives us the inside scoop on things like how to get into a cutting room, what's required of the assistant editor, how the importance of networking can change your career, and how he finds a work-life balance in this demanding field. So stick around for this information-packed interview with Scott Jacobs. So Scott, thank you so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. First question I want to ask is, what got you into film editing?
Well, that's a hefty question. I'll try to be as succinct as I can. What really got me started, it started with being a big gamer back when I was younger. And I love just sitting down, playing any video game for 10, 12 hours a day. I was that kid. Then my junior year in high school, I got involved with singing and performing. And that led me down a whole new passion for theater and performance. So I wanted to pursue that in college. I was originally thinking that I would minor in Japanese, major in business, and then go into the video game industry. But when I found the love for performing and entertaining, I went with that, and I went to a university that had a stellar business program and then a really, really fantastic theater program. So I figured, okay, well, if theater doesn't work out, then I'll just change majors instead of needing to worry about transferring schools.
But you didn't go to film school per se?
Not initially. I eventually did. But what really got me into pursuing film was along the way, studying theater and singing, I was just losing the love for it, and with all creative arts, if you really can't see yourself doing it forever, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. I was losing the love for it, but I wanted to keep entertaining. So I took a blow-off film course to hopefully just get that easy A, but I ended up really, really loving it. And it was the first time that I read a textbook cover to cover because I was just so interested in everything. And then I saw Moulin Rouge, directed by Baz Luhrmann and edited by Joe Bilcock. And a friend at the time was telling me that all the aspects of the movie that I really loved dealt with the visual effects and the editing. And so I went back to that textbook and I reread the section about editing, and it reinvigorated my interest in that. And I found that it comprised my love for gaming and technology and being a nerd, and then my love for being a theater nerd. And I was like, oh my God, there's a job that will pay me to do this. And so I started teaching myself iMovie, then Final Cut, and then I did an internship that I was able to get my hands on Avid for the first time. And taught myself that. I had always wanted a master's degree. So for me, film school was something that I wanted to pursue at the graduate level. And that led me to apply to go to the American Film Institute. And I actually didn't get in the first time I applied. So I found out what I needed to do to become more attractive to them to get into the program. And I spent a year just kind of building up my resume a little bit, and I got accepted in 2005, and I graduated in 2007.
Very cool. So after that, how did you get your foot in the door, like officially into the business?
Yeah. So, people are always saying, oh, if you go to film school, then you get all the connections and it's an easy in, and look at what happened with Ryan Coogler and his editor. And I mean, yeah, there's always those unicorn stories. Those definitely exist, but they're very, very far and few between. Not to say that the people that I graduated AFI with weren't good or anything like that. I mean, of course they were, but there wasn't a director that I really attached myself with at the time that I saw anything was immediately going to happen. You know, we all go to film school wanting to be editors, but what people don't understand is that you still have to pay your dues. And for me, there was a lot of purpose to start off as a PA and work my way up to the top. Because for me, when I get into the editing chair, I want to know that I can communicate intelligently to the first, to the second, know what time everything takes so that, you know, we can pad time if we think we need it. Just be respectful of the positions below me. So for me, I wanted to be able to learn every aspect of the hierarchy. Yeah, so I just started cold calling editors and looking up editors on IMDb. Back at that time, the Editors Guild would put out this book, you know, that was like this thick. That was the member directory.
Sure.
And I just looked up the names, and whoever had their information listed, I sent an email or I called them. And by doing that, I was able to meet with so many amazing people that were just generous to give me their time, ranging from, you know, TV editors to Emmy winning editors and Oscar winners. I mean, it was incredible because no one comes out to LA to be an editor. So, you know, I think it's a lot easier to interact with some of those people, even though you might put them on a pedestal. They enjoy talking, you know, and
Sure.
I enjoy hearing everybody's different stories. So the job that got me my first post PA gig, I had actually emailed Steve Rosenblum's agent, or actually cold called the agency because he didn't have his information listed. And I was a big fan of Ed Zwick's films, and I should have known at the time. I don't know why I didn't, but Steve Rosenblum was actually an alumni of AFI. So when I reached out to him or to his agent, I just said, "Hey, I'm a student at AFI. I really love Steve's work, and I was wondering if I'd be able to be put in contact with him." I waited 3 days, and next thing I know, the agent actually calls me back. It was a boutique agency, so a little easier. If you belong to like CAA or UTA, probably wouldn't have happened. But yeah, the agent wrote back and said he'd be happy to meet with you. Here's his information. Reach out. He's waiting for you. And I scheduled the meeting with him, and I sat down with him for 2 hours, and we just talked. You know, it wasn't, I'm looking for a job or anything like that. It was just strictly talking about the craft of editing. And by the end of it, he ended up saying, "Hey, let me give you the information to my first assistant. Keep in touch. We'll see what happens."
Ah, that's wonderful, man.
So yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. And congratulations on your fortitude there and your boldness. I think that's a big thing. I think a lot of people are just a little bit scared to just reach out. You know, the worst somebody could say is no. It takes a lot of courage, especially if you're in a new town and you don't know anybody. So yeah, really good. Okay, so my next question is, you've worked as an assistant in both features and TV. What's the biggest difference as an assistant editor in those two fields?
the biggest difference is probably the pace of the projects. TV has a much more accelerated schedule to deal with, and you're also going to be juggling multiple episodes at one time. Whereas on a feature, generally speaking, the schedules are a little bit lengthier. For a feature, you're looking at anywhere from 6 months to, depending on the scope, 18 months, and you're only focusing on that one project. Whereas on, a 1 hour network show, even though nowadays we're coming into the release schedule of 12 episodes or 18, you're no longer seeing any shows that are really 24 anymore. Those are an anomaly. But the hardest time that I had as an assistant on a TV show was I was juggling either 3 or 4 episodes at one time because they were all in varying stages of the process. I had one project in dailies. I had another project that was in producer's cut or director's cut. And then we had one that was finishing. And so at any one time, I think it was three, four would be insane. So at any one time, I was juggling three episodes, and that's just a lot to manage and try to keep track of. Whereas on the feature side of things, you are just focused on one project. But I will also say that a bigger difference is that with features, there's more precision involved. What I felt in the projects that I worked on, because every project is different, and these are my opinions and my experiences. So what I say could be very different from other people. But the projects that I've been a part of, there's a lot more wiggle room in TV as far as things being done. Things like an animat or a fluid morph on a TV show that might be done in the color timing, the DI. Whereas on the feature level, things of that nature have to go to a VFX department because they'll make it look better.
Sure.
There's more money involved, and therefore you can spend time to make these look good. Not that a fluid morph through the Avid TV won't look good. It's just you're also talking about throwing something on a 40-inch screen compared to something that's going on a 40-foot screen. So you have
Sure.
to make sure that the quality
Can't
is
see the
there.
imperfections. Right. Exactly.
Right.
So do you prefer working in TV versus features, or one or the other?
It really comes down to, is the project fun, and am I working with people that I want to be working with? That's first and foremost. My main desire is to be continuing in features, but my hand was kind of forced in a way because I had spent several years on a show called Person of Interest, which was an awesome show. I got to work with some amazingly talented people, and I was assisting on there for several years, and then I got bumped up to editor, and then unfortunately the show got canceled. And then trying to find that second editing job was a challenge, because at that point I had my amazing editor and mentor friend, Scott Powell. He had moved on to do a feature, but I took his slot at Person of Interest. So he offered me the first assistant position, but I was like, well, no, I want to edit. So I stayed and I edited. But then, of course, since the show got canceled, I lost being on the same plane as Scott, and I had to make a decision. Do I want to move on to another TV show and assist and rebuild those relationships with people, rebuild that trust that they are willing to give you to cut the show, and then get back to editing? Or do I worry about how much money I can be making because I have a family and two kids? We moved into an apartment based on my editor's rate that I can no longer really afford at an assistant editor rate. But on feature films, you can actually negotiate more. And so it was a big crossroads that I had to consider. And for me, it was staying with features, even though I knew it would be a longer path to editing, which I don't like, but I have more passion for feature films than I do TV. For me, I can make more money as an assistant editor on the features that I've had the ability to work on than being an editor in TV.
Yeah, the rates
me,
are definitely higher in features for both editors and
yeah,
assistants. You've
yes.
also done some work in animation. Tell us the differences for an assistant, in one versus the other, animation versus live action.
Yeah, so my experience with animation is a little different than what you would normally find. It's different because I worked at Illumination, and Illumination, their production is primarily done in Paris. And so a lot of the normal duties that an assistant in animation does, which is processing storyboards, processing all of the different layers of animation. So you start off with storyboards. Once you lock your picture with the storyboards, then you move to layout, and then you have your animation, after you lock layout, and then after animation, you have the render, which is the final image that you see. I would say the easiest way to describe the being an assistant on an animated film is you're all kind of VFX editors and you're VFX assistants, because there's a lot of creativity that goes into editing at the storyboard stage. And then, of course, as things progress and the story changes, editing might change in layout and animation to suit the needs of the story, perhaps. And then maybe a section will go back to storyboard because you're reworking the story. A lot of the fun is with the storyboards for me, because that's where you can really start shaping the story. You get the sound effects work going.
Sure.
And then, of course, the cool aspect of animation over live action is if you need a shot, you can just talk to the director, you talk to the animators. Yep, you can get that shot.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's
so
cool.
Yeah.
So you've worked as a first and you've worked as a second. For people who are uninitiated, what are the big differences between a first and a second assistant editor?
Well, the first assistant is really the one in charge of the cutting room. Obviously, the editor is the head honcho. He or she calls the shots for sure. But the first assistant is kind of the central hub of the cutting room. And they're the ones that the post producers go to generally. The VFX producers will go to just kind of wrangle all of the information. The first will generally sit in with the editor, take notes, implement changes, things of that nature. So they're really steering the ship. And the second assistant, if you're fortunate enough to have a cutting room that's that large, the second assistant will be kind of like the first mate in a way to the first assistant, where the second will just kind of help execute anything that the first can't handle. Generally speaking, second assistants will handle the turnovers. Taking what we've done in an editorial and shipping it off to the different departments, music and sound. The first assistant will generally handle the DI, just because that's such a sensitive part of the process, at least on the feature side of things.
The digital intermediate.
Yeah. And doing all of the color correction, and then the DI facility will send confidence checks back so that you can bring those into the Avid and make sure that our cuts are lining up with the cuts that they've done in the facility, making sure that the VFX versions that have been cut in are matching what we have in the Avid in the cutting room. And it really just comes around to delegating tasks.
Sure.
And then, of course, the assistants, any other general assistants that don't have a second assistant title to it, are just there to help out in any way that they can, just to keep
picking up the
moving.
slack. Yeah, absolutely. So, as a first assistant, what are your biggest challenges?
The biggest challenge would be just making sure that the editor has everything that they need on a day-to-day basis to be comfortable and stay focused on cutting. Your job is to make the editor comfortable. Your job is to put out fires before they become forest fire. You want to keep it contained before it really gets out of hand. And obviously things happen, and sometimes there's elements that are out of your control. But for me, that's the biggest challenge, is just trying to get everything as fast as you can, making it right, owning up to your mistakes. If you make a mistake, because we're all human, it's going to be a bigger problem if you try to sweep the mistake under the rug. The best thing is just to correct anything before it leaves. And if something happens, then just own up to it, fix it, and move on.
Just a quick break to say, if you want to see more content about the world of professional film and video editing, hit that subscribe button and click that bell to be notified of future videos. It really helps us get the word out about our amazing craft. And be sure to follow us on our other social channels. Links are in the description below. Now back to our interview with Scott. So you're currently working on the new series Wanda Vision for Marvel, right?
Yes, I am.
Congratulations. That's an awesome credit. But you're doing it remotely.
Correct. But Marvel's been awesome. They've treated us really, really well, and they've kept all of their productions going in post. They've been really great about just keeping the show moving forward as best as we can. And we were set up with a cloud solution at first, which, I mean, look, all of this stuff has worked out way better than I anticipated. As long as you have that solid internet connection, 400 down, 20 up seems to be the gold standard
Sweet
right
spot.
now
Yeah.
for really making things happen. Yeah, we definitely had bumps in the road. There was some challenges working in the PC environment compared to the Mac server environment. After a couple weeks, we got up and running, and really it was no different than if we were working in the cutting room.
Wow.
Yeah, it worked really well. And Marvel IT, they are amazing. Like they got all of the shows up and running, and they are some of the smartest people that I've worked with.
Yeah, well, I got to imagine they've got a pretty top caliber people up in Marvel, and the resources to support the shows in any way they need. But working
Yeah.
remotely, it's such a new thing. How has it changed the job for you?
The biggest thing was the communication aspect of everything. I know that there was one show that just had Zoom on all the time, so that there was a little bit more of that element of, you walking into their room or something like that. We didn't do that, which I'm okay with because I don't want to be on camera 24/7. But that's been the hardest part is the communication takes longer, to make sure an output is needing to go somewhere or who it's going to. Normally, it would take 20 seconds to walk down the hall, double check what you're doing is right, and you'll be on your way. But now everybody is so pulled in so many different directions that questions aren't answered right away. So you're kind of, there's times where you're sitting around waiting 10 minutes for a simple answer, but you can't pull the trigger because you don't have your answer yet.
Interesting.
That for me has been a challenge, but it has worked a lot better than I thought it would. I mean, I think we're always going to be going to the cutting room, but I think it's going to be less of an issue for productions to allowing people to work from home, because before it was kind of a special thing that productions would give to their editor, or allowing editors to take material home with them. And now that we've all been used to it for, thankfully those of us who are working have been used to it for as long as we have been, the prospect of needing to be in LA is changing. I know that for Wanda Vision, there's a guy who's all the way in New York right now.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
he's based in LA, but he went home to New York to be with family and everything, and Marvel sent the material out.
I actually have a friend who's working at Warner Brothers who is working from Idaho, and
Yeah, it's great.
seems to work pretty well for everybody. So, are you working on a proprietary system of Marvel's or Disney's, or are you using any kind of specific remote setup?
Yeah, no, I'm nothing proprietary. Everything is available by anybody, to the point where I thought about buying the system for myself. I was actually talking to Richard about that. And then, of course, things started hitting the fan a little bit with the system, and there's some issues that could pop up on the networking side. So it became less of an investment that I wanted to make. But we're using a system called Amulet Hotkey, which is essentially a direct Ethernet line from your home straight to the studio. If the kinks can be worked out with Amulet, and then a lot of it is based on the network infrastructure where your Avid is going to be based. So there are some of those factors involved. But once some of those kinks get worked out, Amulet is going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think I really enjoyed working with that system. And the other system that I have is VDI. I don't know if that's what it's called, but oh no, you know what? It's Teradici.
But none of your media is local. Everything is in Burbank.
Nothing is local. Yeah, everything is in Burbank and completely secure. Yeah, it's worked out really, really well.
Cool. Okay, so I'm really interested in the fact that you've already edited quite a few short films. How do you find short films to cut?
That's a tricky one. Several of the short films that I've done, I actually cut because the director is an actor, and he actually acted in one of my thesis films from AFI. And I just kept in touch with him over the years, and he wanted to start directing, and he's a writer as well. And he was doing stuff, and I said, "Well, hey, let me cut," because the problem with assisting on bigger projects or even a crazy TV show is there isn't a lot of time to cut because you're needing to support the show. So you have to just take those opportunities. And, for me, it was, with this particular guy, I just said, hey, just let me cut for free. You don't need to pay me. I just want to be creative. I want to get my juices flowing and keeping up with practicing my craft. Actually, on all the short films I've done, I thankfully have been able to just do them for free because I'm just doing them on the side. And I always say to everybody, if the turnaround time isn't crazy and you're flexible with my schedule, then yeah, let's do it. I'm all in. Just don't make me go crazy. Then I would say just networking groups. This last short film that I've been cutting for a while, again, it was a situation. I just wanted to be creative. It was a female director who had some really promising talent, and that job just came up because someone in a group that I belonged to said that this person was looking for an editor, and I threw my name in the hat, and she hit me up, and it's been awesome. We have a great working relationship together, and hopefully she continues to do stuff.
Sure.
Just keep working.
Yeah, that's always the hope.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at a perfect example is Tom Cross with Whiplash. He cut the short on that. I don't know the full story, but he cut the short for Whiplash. It did really, really well, and then they wanted to make a feature out of it, and then he cut the feature, and they won him an Oscar. Again, a unicorn situation, but still,
amazing.
I've never met him. I've never met him. I hear he's a really great guy, so I'm glad it happened to someone like him. But yeah, you hear those stories, and there's the long path of assisting and hoping to get that opportunity with your editor to, continuing to cut scenes to become an additional editor, to then co-edit, but that takes time. A short film is definitely another alternative to taking that fast track to editing. You just need to cut one short film that takes off, that maybe is a bigger, just a small piece to a bigger pie that the director or writer, whoever started the short, has in mind. So having
else.
that vehicle, exactly. You never know. Every opportunity is a good opportunity. You just never know what door is going to open from something that you've done.
I totally agree. I think it is a really smart strategy if someone is doing it with that intention, because you're right. You could wait a long time to get bumped up. Sometimes maybe not. Maybe you get bumped up quickly, depending on. But we don't know, how the heavens or how the universe is going to, treat us. And it's really important to continue to develop these relationships with new filmmakers. And you're taking a chance. They're taking a chance on you, but you never know. Like in Tom Cross's case with Damien Chazelle, you never know where it's going to lead to.
Yeah. So, you really just need to keep your eyes and ears open for anything that comes up.
Absolutely. Okay. So my next question is a tough one. We all think about this, and especially with younger kids. How do you find a work-life balance, Scott?
Find a really, really strong partner. No, for me, it was extremely challenging because I'm a workaholic. I love working. Look, I would do this job for free. I would never tell a producer that, but
I'm cutting that out. But I say that all the time also. And so do people like Jeff Ford. This is what we do because we love doing it.
Yeah, I just absolutely love doing what I do. So working the 15 hours a day, 80 to 100 hours a week, it doesn't bother me. It bothered my at the time, my girlfriend, and it took a really long time for her to be comfortable with the hours that I was working. The harder part was when I wasn't working and I needed to go out to meet up with friends at a bar or a party or something. And she's like, "Why are you going out? Like, are you cheating on me? Like, what's going on?" And it's like, "No, I'm not. Like, I love you." It's just like I actually have to work harder when I'm not cutting, because you just got to keep that network growing, and you got to keep moving. So it took several years for her to be okay with it, but it took me even longer, because when I started, finding that my passion wasn't just work anymore, I was starting to have a struggle with staying late and worrying about her feelings and worrying about my kids when they started noticing, like, "Oh, where's dad? He's not around a lot." But it was a lot of working through things with my wife, and just an understanding that when I'm home, I will make up for the time that I've been gone. And yeah, when you find that special someone, hopefully they understand and they can work with you.
Yeah, I think that's key. I mean, I really think that if you are in a relationship, you have to have a clear understanding with each other of what the job entails, and you have to understand possibly what their job entails. I mean, a lot of jobs are very intense uh, these days, and you also have to make a
Yeah.
decision of whether or not, in your case, you made a clear decision. You had a lot of passion and drive for film editing. You have to, ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? Or do I really have the ability, to work these kinds of hours and with these kinds of crazy people? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of crazy people in our business. What are the 2 or 3 specific pieces of advice you can give to anyone who is aspiring to become a film editor or an assistant editor or get in a cutting room? What could you tell them?
First thing is definitely something that I mentioned earlier, is that, make sure this is what you're passionate about, even if it's just what you're passionate about right now, because you're going to be sitting down in a chair for 8 to 12, 15 hours a day, and you really need to know that you enjoy doing it. If you feel like there is something else that you can be doing that would be fulfilling for you, then I'm not going to say don't continue to pursue editing, but just be mindful of that feeling, because if your definition of making it is working in Hollywood, then you're going to need to make sure that you have that passion. Second, network. You just have to network. As uncomfortable as it might be for you, you need to find a way to network with the people that you want to be involved with. If your passion is narrative TV dramas, then try to meet assistant editors that are working on shows that you like. That was probably the one mistake that I made when I was trying to get my foot in the door, is that while meeting with some of the editors that I got to meet with, it was amazing, and I still talk with some of them today, it would have been more beneficial to me to be talking to assistant editors, because those are the people that will be engaging and interacting with you the most. So I would say try to reach out to assistant editors in addition to editors, but you just got to network. And then, Larry, you didn't pay me to say this at all, but if your passion and your desire is to be in Hollywood, assisting Hollywood editing, then continue taking this course. I don't know how many people will actually see these interviews that aren't already subscribed to Master the Workflow, but this program is incredible. It is so on point with what you need to learn and what you need to understand when it comes to working in a Hollywood cutting room environment. It's really, I wish this program was around. When I was younger, not to say that I still wouldn't necessarily have done film school, but there's things that are included in the Master of the Workflow that aren't included in film school,
Sure.
because they teach you how to be an editor in film school. They don't teach you to be an assistant. Maybe there's a course focusing on elements of it, but what you guys have developed is seriously such an amazing tool for people to have. And even I used the code book when I was put in charge of creating the code book, which I had never done before a couple of shows ago. So even someone as seasoned as me still had benefit to the program. So I would say those are the key points.
Well, I didn't pay you to say that, but I would have if I would have thought of it. Thank you very much for that. And thank you for your time, man. I mean, this is valuable information for anybody who wants to get into our world and, make movies. And hearing it from someone with your kind of chops, I'm going to link to your IMDb profile so people can see the kind of films that you've worked on. And just thank you so much for being generous with your time. Really appreciate it, Scott.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I'm glad we were finally able to find time to make this work.
Cool. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks. Take care.